Hi, everybody, and welcome back. This is COM 1160, week number 12. We're officially on the 3-week countdown. So not much time left. We're going to be looking at completing your final draft and going over some things to keep in mind as you're revising your final draft. So the first thing I want to go over is just what we're going to do this week and some sort of housekeeping issues that relate to due dates and things like that. The first thing that we're going to do this week, we're going to talk about how to complete the final draft of the essay and things that you need to keep in mind as you're revising. In terms of a due date, I was thinking about all of the stress that you're under and all of the, exams and assignments and everything coming up. So I've come up with a bit of a plan that I think is going to work for everybody, and that'll give you lots of flexibility. So here is what I've come up with. The final draft of your essay can be due anytime before December 18th at midnight. So you can decide to turn it in at any point, basically between now and December 18th. So I want to give you enough flexibility so that you actually have time to work on it, and you can work on it at the time that's best for you. In terms of actually processing this stuff, though, I'm a little limited because your final grades I have to put in on December 22nd. So it doesn't give me a ton of time to do feedback or anything if you submit on the 18th. So I've come up with a kind of dual due date. Here's the deal. If you get your final draft in before December 11th at midnight, you're going to receive full commentary. So you'll get some written feedback with it. If you submit between the 11th and the 18th, you're only going to receive a number grade. Okay. I want to reassure you, though, that there's no difference in the actual grade that you'll receive. The only difference if you get it in before the 11th is that you'll actually get written feedback on your final draft. So it's entirely up to you and entirely based on what your schedule is like. As I've said before, I know many of you are also balancing family responsibilities and jobs and goodness knows what else is going on in your real lives. So I want to give you the choice, okay, in terms of what you're going to do. So entirely up to you, as long as it's in my hand, or I guess I should say on Blackboard, before midnight on the 18th, I'll have it and I'll have time to grade it and get it ready for your final grade. Okay. Next week, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a very short course review to prepare you for the final assessment. In week number 14, when you're going to be writing, final exams in a lot of classes, our final assessment will be released and you'll have until December 18th at midnight to submit it. So I'm not going to put a time limit or anything like that on it. Again, trying to be as flexible as I can so that you can work out what works best for you. Obviously, I'll give you lots of information and instructions and everything on how to do that. But I just wanted to give you an idea of what the dates look like and what the process will look like for these next 3 weeks. Okay, so let's actually talk about the final drafts because that's our business for today. The first thing I want you to notice is that I've said no stress. Okay, so your final draft should really not be a stressful process at all. You've done all the work. You've written a rough draft now. You did your outlining. Really, everything that we've done since September is preparing you for this point. So you've done all the heavy lifting. Preparing your final draft is really just about preparing your showcase. So this is the assignment that's going to show off everything that you've learned. Your APA skills, your writing skills, your organization skills. All of these things that we've looked at in little chunks, you're now all pulling together, okay, in this final assignment. So, like I said, no stress. Try to enjoy the process. I know there's a lot going on in your other classes, but this is really about sort of fancying up your rough draft and showing off everything that you've learned. So, although I won't say it should be fun, I can't turn it into a party or anything. It should actually be, an experience that you somewhat enjoy because it's allowing you to showcase everything that you've learned. You do want to make sure, though, that your final draft represents your best work, okay? Because it really is your brag piece. It really is the culmination of everything that you've done in this course so far. It's important that you take time, okay, to revise and edit your paper carefully. You may have done quite well grade-wise on the rough draft, but remember that I was looking at it as a rough draft, okay? So I was expecting that you would make some changes. I wasn't expecting everything to be absolutely letter perfect or anything on your rough draft. I am a little bit harsher, okay, when it comes to your final product, because I know you've had time to look it over and review it and fix any of those errors or anything that may have come up. So we should talk about the different ways that you're going to review and the different things that you need to think about as you're reviewing and you're preparing. The way I like to do it, not necessarily going to be the way that you like to do it, but the way I like to do it and the way I recommend to do it is to go through several different reviews with it, looking for different things each time. I find if I try to revise and I try to revise for everything that I need to look at all at once, it's a really heavy duty task. I find it much easier to go chunk by chunk, okay, and look at one thing and revise, look at another thing and then revise. So the first thing I'm going to suggest is that you do an organization review, okay? And an organization really is just about how you followed the structure of an essay, okay? So do you have the structure in place? So at the essay level, take a look at your whole essay and consider some questions, okay? And then based on your answer to those questions, you might want to revise or rewrite some parts. You want to look at your introduction and you want to see, does that proceed clearly from the opening statement through down to the thesis statement? Then take a look at each body paragraph and ask yourself, is there a clear main idea that relates to the thesis there? Look at the details, okay? The main ideas in the body paragraph, are those in logical order? Okay, are there connections that are being made? Go back and look at the topic sentences or transitions, okay, for the overall flow of ideas. And then finally, take a look at your conclusion and determine whether it summarizes your main idea and revisits your thesis, okay? By the way, these questions that I have up here on the screen, I'm going to give to you in a handout. Okay, so if you want to use it as a kind of checklist, you can do that. Second, after I've looked at the essay as a whole, I always look at the paragraph. Okay, so I go paragraph by paragraph, especially in the body paragraphs. And I double check. Okay, do my topic sentences clearly state the main idea? If my topic sentences aren't super clear, I do a little revision and rewrite them. Then I take a look at the details in each paragraph. Do they all relate to that main idea? If there's something that doesn't relate, I axe it. I get rid of it. If there's something that needs a little bit more explanation, I might add in a sentence. And then again, okay, look at any of the sentences and see, do you need to recast them or rewrite them to improve the flow of the sentences? Okay. One little hint that I'll give you, which works for me, is that when I'm doing this, especially at the paragraph level, I find that if I read aloud, I'm able to follow the ideas a lot better. Okay, so I can see when I read aloud, I can find gaps that I don't necessarily see when I'm just reading on the screen. So that might be something to try. After you've done the organization review, you want to take a look at cohesion. And cohesion is how everything in the paper fits together or sticks together. Okay, so I want to take a look at the opening of the paper when I'm first considering cohesion and ask myself, does the opening, the first couple of sentences that I'm writing, clearly connect to the broader topic and thesis? I want to make sure if I'm going to use any entertaining quotes or anecdotes or any of those sort of attention-getting devices that they serve a purpose. I then want to take a look for the body of the paper and make sure that I've included support from research for each main point. Okay, so I want to make sure I haven't made a point and not backed it up with some research. I want to make sure. I also want to look at any direct quotations that I've used. Okay, have I included introductory material before those quotations? Remember that quotations should never ever stand alone in a paragraph as their own sentence. I always have to weave them into a sentence. So take a look, okay, at each of those times that you've direct quoted and make sure, okay, that you've transitioned or kind of woven those in. I want to take a look at both paraphrased and quoted material to make sure that everything that I've included develops the points, okay, that I'm staying on topic there. I want to make sure as well, okay, to consider whether I need to add or revise parts of the paper to help the reader understand how certain information from a source is relevant. I want to make sure that I've made it really clear. Remember that the person who's reading your essay probably has not read the original research that you're looking at. So see if you have any gaps in there. I want to take a look as well to see if I've overused material from my sources. So do I have any paragraphs where I put in way too many direct quotes so that I don't have a lot of original writing? It's just sort of like quotations that are pasted in. I want to take a look at that to make sure that I haven't overused. Excuse me. And then finally, I want to take a look at the end. Okay, I want to take a look at the conclusion. I want to make sure that the conclusion makes sense based on the rest of the paper. And if I'm bringing up any new questions or suggestions in the conclusion or in my memorable statement, I want to make sure that those are clearly linked to earlier material. After I've done cohesion, so I look at organization and cohesion, which is like the structure and then the way the essay sticks together. Then I take a look at my writing style. Okay, so I do like a kind of third review. And I want to look at the way that I've actually written. So I'm not looking at ideas at this stage. I'm looking at expression, how I've expressed stuff. I want to make sure that I've avoided excessive wordiness. Okay, so am I throwing in all sorts of extra words that don't really serve a function? If I have, I'm going to get rid of those. I want to take a look at my sentence, and I want to look at sentences, I want to look for a variety there. So I want to see different lengths of sentences, and I want to see different structures of sentences. Readers like variety, okay? So they like different kinds of sentences, and I want to make sure that I have variety there. I want to make sure that I've avoided using first-person pronouns like I and we. I want to make sure that I've used the active grammatical voice wherever I can. I also want to make sure that I've defined any specialized terms that might be unfamiliar to readers. And then I want to also make sure that I've used clear, straightforward language where I can, and that I've avoided unnecessary jargon. Okay, remember again that your audience for this paper is another student. So you don't want to fill it up with all sorts of jargon, like, of highly specific medical terms that the person who's reading it won't necessarily understand. I want to also make sure that I've used a balanced tone, that I'm neither too indecisive nor too forceful, okay, in the way that I'm writing. After I've considered style, then I go to everybody's favorite. I actually take a look at the nuts and bolts of my writing, and I do a grammar, mechanics, punctuation, usage, and spelling review. So I want to make sure that my paper is free of grammatical errors, such as those common errors like subject-verb agreement and sentence fragments. I also want to take a look at my punctuation and mechanics. So I want to look for stuff like misplaced commas or incorrectly formatted source titles. I then want to take a look at spelling errors, okay? I want to proofread, using my eyes rather than just relying on spell check to make sure that I've spelled things incorrectly. Remember that spell check is great, but it can be a kind of false friend, right? Sometimes it changes. It doesn't understand what word you're trying to use, and it changes the word on you. So I still need to actually review it with my eyes. And then again, I think about myself and I think about any errors that I know that I make frequently. So for example, for me, that's comma usage. And I take an extra special look at that so that I know that I'm dealing with any errors that I tend to make frequently. Okay, and I, again, just go through this sentence by sentence. It's not the world's most exciting job, but it really does help improve your writing. Okay, so like I always say, pour yourself a big cup of coffee, sit down with it, and just sort of grunt through all of the grammar, mechanics, and punctuation. The next part, right, is the APA review. So remember, I want to be very careful with my APA because in healthcare programs, they expect your APA to be actually 100% perfect. So I want to deal with any APA issues that I have. The first thing I want to do before anything else is to make sure that within the body of my paper, any fact or idea that's taken from a source is credited to the correct source. Okay, in some cases on your rough drafts, I said, oh, not using APA or not using APA all the places that you need to. Make sure that you're going back and you're making sure, okay, it's a protection for yourself. It's a protection for the reader. So you want to make sure that you get all of that straightened around. I want to make sure that every in-text citation that I'm using has the author's name and year of publication. And I want to make sure that each one of them is in correct format. I want to make sure that every source that I've listed in the body of my paper has an entry on the references section. Okay, the references section of your paper, remember, includes a heading and is double spaced and has alphabetized entries. I want to make sure that each entry in my references section is indented on the second and any subsequent line. Okay, so go back, look at the examples, make sure that you're doing it right. I want to make sure that each entry on my references page has all the information that I need for the source type and that it's in the correct sequence and the correct format. I also want to make sure, I can't forget, that I have a title page. Okay, again, formatted. Go back, look at your template. Okay, make sure that you're following that correct format. Excuse me. I want to make sure too that I have the running head. Okay, so remember, up at the top, all in caps. And then I just want to double check that my margins haven't changed, especially if I'm using that template. So make sure that there hasn't been any change there. So that's set at 1 inch. And then again, remember, your text is double spaced and set in a standard 12-point font. So after you've done all of your revising, okay, which should take, if you're not rushing, I would say like at least a couple of hours to go through. You want to put it all together and get it ready for submission. So in terms of format, what you're actually going to be submitting on Blackboard is going to start with your APA title page. You're then going to have the body of your essay. So you're going to have your introduction, your body paragraphs, and your conclusion. And then you're going to end with an APA references page. So what you're submitting is actually going to look a lot like the APA template, okay, the fake paper that's in the template. That's it in terms of what you need to do for revising. Try not to get frustrated with the revising process. Like I said, remember, tell yourself, okay, I'm going to just sit down with this and just concentrate for a couple of hours and take a look and go over all of this stuff and produce the best piece of work that I can. Good luck with it. Okay, I will put up an assignment for you, very sort of brief, just outlining that what you're doing is you're turning in your final draft. You'll upload it to Blackboard as you usually do. And again, remember those 2 dual dates. I'll just go back to that again. So remember, the very last deadline, okay, for you to follow is submitting this before December 18th at midnight. But if you're able to get it in between the before the 11th at midnight, you're going to get full commentary. Okay? I will still be available for course chats, so I'll be available for any kind of Q&As. If you have any questions as you're revising or as you're working, pop on by and we'll handle those. Next week, we'll actually go through the course review. It'll be like a walk down memory lane for us, and we'll get ready to do the final assessment. So remember, all you have now is this final draft and then a final assessment coming up, and you can call COM 1160 a done deal. Good luck. I know these last few weeks are kind of rough. Stay positive, stay focused. We're all going to have a great holiday when all of this is over, and feel proud of yourself. You're the first group to really, truly be doing online education. You've got this. You're doing great. I'll talk to you next week.